David went to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him, and asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" David answered Ahimelech the priest, "The king charged me with a certain matter, and said to me, 'No one is to know anything about your mission and your instructions.' As for my men, I have told them to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever you can find." Now, David doesn't want this guy to know what he's really doing there. He's doing this and trying to protect this man. Okay? It's basically the sort of thing where you don't want someone to know what, you don't want someone to have guilty knowledge of your criminal activities, because you don't want that person to get in trouble. Okay? That person can then claim ignorance of your motivations later on. It's not going to do Ahimelech any good in the long run, unfortunately. But David is lying to Ahimelech here for the purpose of keeping Ahimelech safe in front of Saul, because Ahimelech can say that he knew nothing about David's situation when he doesn't. Now again, it's not going to end up helping Ahimelech or his people in Nob, but David is trying to protect Ahimelech here by giving him a cover story. But the priest answered David, "I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women." David replied, "Indeed, women have been kept from us, as usual whenever I set out. Have kept us, or the footnote down here is, kept from us in the past few days since I set out." They're not supposed to have sex when they're on a mission to fight. Sexual relations make you unclean for a day until you clean yourself, and it's also a distraction. You can have sex with your wife when you get home, not whenever you're on the mission to do some fighting. This consecrated bread, by the way, let's read about this here. Oh boy, where were we? Numbers. This is one of those things where, because the law is not given necessarily in straightforward fashion, but kind of piecemeal all throughout the second half of Exodus and the first hold on, hang on. I found it, by the way. It's in Leviticus 24. Hello? Okay. Alrighty then. Bye. I'll edit that out later. Leviticus 24, starting in verse 5. The Lord is talking to Moses here, and it says, "Take fine flour and bake 12 loaves of bread, using 2/10 of an ephah for each loaf. Set them in 2 rows, 6 in each row, on the table of pure gold before the Lord. Along each row put some pure incense as a memorial portion to represent the bread, and to be an offering made to the Lord by fire. This bread is to be set out before the Lord regularly, Sabbath after Sabbath, on behalf of the Israelites as a lasting covenant. It belongs to Aaron and his sons, who are to eat it in a holy place, because it is the most holy part of their regular share of the offerings made to the Lord by fire." This is that bread. This is the bread that Jesus will say to the Pharisees that David and his men ate, even though it belongs to Aaron and his sons. This is going to be an example that Jesus draws on during his encounter with the Pharisees later on. So, the men's things, or the men's bodies, are holy even on missions that are not holy. So David always sets his men apart for a special... Remember, holy means, ultimately, to be set apart for special use. Okay? There is an element of purity that goes along with that, of course. But we think of holy as being like pure. And that's true, but it really means set apart for a special use. Now, to do that, to be that, you have to be pure. But the specific purpose of being holy, or being labeled as being holy, means you're set apart for a special use. And so whenever David goes out to fight, he always makes sure that his men have been set apart for that special use, have been made holy, have been purified. even on missions that are not. The men's things or the men's bodies are holy even on missions that are not holy. How much more so today? So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there except the bread of the presence that had been removed from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken away. Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, unfortunately. A spy. Not really a spy. Oh, he'll end up being a spy. Now, he's not there as a spy. He will end up informing on this meeting to Saul. So the cover is going to be blown by this guy who is going to report this meeting to Saul. Now, why he's there, I'm not sure. It says he's detained before the Lord. Does that mean he was being held by the priest for some reason? Or being held by the Lord? Or does that mean that he was simply there to offer something to the Lord and got delayed? I'm not sure. But one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, not an Israelite, but an Edomite. He was Saul's head shepherd. David asked Ahimelech, "Don't you have a spear or a sword here? I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon, because the king's business was urgent." In other words, he was running for his life. He was getting out of there with nothing but the clothes on his back. The priest replied, "The sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." That day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. Now Gath is one of the big Philistine cities. So he is leaving Israel behind and going to take refuge in the Philistines. Or at least he's going to try to. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land?" So it was known to the people, even to the Philistines, that David was the king in waiting. He was the anointed one, the one in waiting to be king. Even the Philistines knew that. This was not a secret by this point in time. Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands, and he's slaying. We're the Philistines. We're the ones on the wrong side of that equation. We're the thousands that they're slaying. What are we letting this guy in our territory for? David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence, and while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look at this man. He is insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house?" So Achish has enough crazy people to deal with already. He doesn't want to deal with another one. Hello? Okay, I'll be right out there. Now David will later on actually take refuge with the king of Gath, with this very guy, Achish, or at least somebody with this name. Probably the same dude. It could be his son who's inherited the title, but it's probably the same guy, because it's not very long after this. So he will end up taking refuge with them and spending some time with them. So there is going to be a point in time when he will desert to the Philistine camp and stay there for a while. But not right now. Not right now. They're not trusting him yet. Remember, David's slaying his tens of thousands, and the tens of thousands that he's slaying are Philistines. So they're not willing to forgive and forget just yet.